All right, so before I get started with what this video is going to consist most of, just a couple of other updates. So I found out what I'm going to sort of fill this area with here. So this is a vibrant 4-port oil catch can, which is going to live somewhere, somehow in this area. And the reason I opted for the 4-port is because, well, a 3-port would have done fine, but vibrant either has 2 or 4. Anyways, what I'm going to do, and what most people do on these motors, is here, there's a few ways to go about it. So under this little area here is like a little tray, and it'll make more sense when I actually do it. But anyways, you put 2 bulkhead fittings here to give a good circulation and vent for crankcase pressure. And what some people do as well is just use the existing, like the OEM CCV, but usually you'll do 2 of them for better venting. And then what I'm also going to do is have, so it has 2 inlets and 2 outlets. One of the outlets I'm going to have going in between the turbo here. So everything, when the turbo is spinning, this area is under vacuum. So I'm going to have a aluminum 45 here with another bung, and what that's going to do is pull a vacuum on this setup and actually help with the crankcase pressure, so it doesn't actually build up too much pressure and blow out gaskets and stuff. So yeah, that's the plan. It'll make more sense later. Long story short, this area is going to house this bad boy. And then moving on, here I have a 3D printed piece, and what this piece is doing, it's basically a port through the firewall. It's also not really installed. One sec, let me pull it out. It'll make more sense. So this is the part here, and it's just a pretty simple concept. This goes behind the firewall, this goes in front, the 2 pieces bolt together and sandwich the firewall in between here. It's a 3D printed piece that I designed, pretty proud of it. This isn't the final piece though. I'm going to be printing it probably in white to match the bay. But what it's going to do is it's going to hold the bulkheads here, be in and out or whichever one, for the heater core. And then I've also got the feed for my water methanol injection. All right, so here's the plan for today. Where do I start? Wiring. Going to be making the existing power switch or the fan speed switch work for the new heater core. So that's what all this stuff is for. We've got inline fuse holder. This just holds a mini fuse. It'll make sense in a bit. We've got a 5-pin relay. This is, well, 5-pin isn't necessary, but the cool part about a 5-pin is you can use it just like a 4-pin, and it's still pretty much the exact same. This is just what I already had, so why spend money if you don't have to? So let me get a little bit better set up here and start working on it. Okay. Kind of liking this setup. I think it'll work. All right, so kind of blinding myself a bit, but I have a light here, super convenient little light that I finally invested in so you guys can stop complaining about bad lighting. And it's magnetic. Luckily I'm working beside my car, so I can just leave it here and illuminate what I'm working on. So to start, there's a few ways I can start. There's really no order, but I'll show you guys. I'm kind of using these spade connectors in a little bit of a weird way. Spade, blade, I don't really know, but these little slide-on connectors, but I'm using them backwards, so I've clipped the ends off of them and I'm sliding them onto the pins here, and they clip on pretty nicely. This is temporary. I'm going to source the original OEM connector that would usually go here. I don't want to cut up the one that's already in the car. So this little section will be temporary, but once I get the other connector, it'll be final. So I think to start, I'm gonna prep the relay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the middle pin out because that's the, I guess, the extra pin in the 5-pin relay setup that I don't require. So rip that out. So to pull them out, on the blade connector here, there's like a little ear, and you just have to bend it in. So now it's effectively a 4-pin. So red will remain the positive. So prep this. And what we're going to do on the positive is have the fuse on it. So these are my favorite style of wire stripper because you just feed the wire. Well, it's technically backwards, so I'll have to use it upside down. Feed the wire in to your desired length that you need. Boom. Rips it off for you. Gives you a nice clean break. Also, really handy is the Milwaukee soldering iron. It's not usable for every single soldering application. Like I wouldn't use it for like fine electronics or like if you're trying to reflow a logic board or something. This really isn't meant for that, but when you're doing stuff in the car and wiring things like I am right now, it's really, really handy, especially because you don't need to plug it into anything. It also gets warm very fast. I've heard though that they're somewhat fragile. People have complained about them just breaking easily and stuff, so take it for what it's worth. So I'm just running my heat shrink on there first. Another nifty thing is you can lock it on a 90. All right, my battery died. Anyway, so once you have it soldered, nice and simple, just slide the heat shrink over. Could have probably picked a slightly better size. Some people say that you're not supposed to use a lighter for heat shrink. They say to use a heat gun. I don't own a heat gun right now, so that's all I got. Bam. Hope it's in focus. All right, changed up my aperture, so hopefully more is in focus. Anyway, again, got this part done. So now that the relay is, well, ready for positive in a sense, the rest I need to do in the car. Going to get the wires ready that will run from the switch to the heater core. So this has 5 pins, and I'm only going to be using 4 of them because the first pin is for this like sweeping area, where I guess it just like there's a variable potentiometer here, and then the rest are just hard limits. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The fan on the heater core that I have only has 4 positions, so this first pin is going to be useless for me, so I'm not going to bother with it. So it's just going to be off on stage 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And then the last one is where I feed power into it. Okay. So right now I'm just zip tying the wires together to hold them while I run some loom through it, or run it through some loom. So just to hold it pretty much one length. I've also got heat shrink here, which I haven't shrunk yet, and it'll make sense in just a second. Straighten out the wire. And I have some braid here. It's a little tricky to get started, but you want to push on it to kind of open it up. And you feed your wires through. I forgot, there's one step that makes this a bit easier. Bam. So I just terminated the ends of the wires with some heat shrink here to give me a little bit of a point and less drag. Because what can happen is the wires are a bit pointy and it gets stuck in the sheath when you're trying to put it on. So now, makes it a little bit easier to get started. And you just take your time putting it on. I'm rusty. It's been a little while since I've done some wiring, but what I was supposed to do is I was supposed to heat up the end here to melt it, to give it, just make it fresh. So I'm going to go a bit past, heat it up, and then come back. So now it's a lot easier to feed the heat shrink over top of. Let's go about halfway. And I'm going to be leaving quite a bit extra at the ends here because, like I said, I'm going to be taking this off and changing it for the OEM connector that would go here later on. So I'm going to leave myself some space. Just like that, braided. So now I'm going to cut the excess off the end here and do pretty much the same thing. But before that, I'm just going to pull it tight. Just don't want too much slack. So here's what we're dealing with. We've got the braided cable that I just did, which will go to the 3 speeds. I got it mixed up. It's 3 speeds and a ground on the blower motor, not 4 speeds. So on the switch, it'll be 2 will be low, 3 will be medium, 4 will be high, whatever. Not a big deal. So those are plugged in here. And we've got the main power, which can be fed off of the battery. And the reason that I'm using a relay is because I'm going to use an ignition source to trigger the relay. Then once the relay triggers on, it'll grab power from the battery. At first I was just going to run power straight off the battery, but then I realized that if I, let's say, forget the fan on, whatever else, with the car off, it'll still power it. So this adds another layer of safety. Under the hood, this is the wiring right here for the blower motor fan. So I'm going to be plugging this loom into it and then feeding it through to the other side. Unfortunately, the wiring colors, one doesn't match. I wasn't able to get my hands on the 14 gauge orange, so that'll be blue instead. But the yellow and the red are there, so whatever. It'll be easy to figure it out. Okay, so there's also a couple things have changed in here. So I finally got my act together, got some hose clamps, finished putting all the ducting in and sealing it up. I also anchored up here some of the wiring, keep it out of the way, nice and tucked in. So this is the new wiring for the switch. So just hook the battery up, as you can see, light is on. And there's a bunch of stuff that's going to be changing here. Obviously, as you can see, it's a mess of wires, so I'll need to be extending a few things to tuck everything up nicely. But just to reassess, I've got the ground off the fan run somewhere behind here. It's hard to see. We've got the relay giving us our power here. We've got our low, medium, and high signals. We've got our fuse, power, ground is technically coming off of there. And then off of my diagnostic port, right here, I have a signal for accessory that's just right here. So now, if I turn this on, it shouldn't work. Alright, so it's not working, which is good. And now, I put the car into accessory. Turn this to 2. Alright. So 2 is low, medium, and high. Oh. I'm feeling it, definitely feeling it coming through, so it's good stuff. As you can see by the one little strand of hair that's here, that's air. Alright, so that's all the electrical working as it should. The next step is, well, I guess it's going to be a bit mixed. We've got to finish tucking up the wiring, making it look all pretty, and obviously put the rest of the interior back together, and also finish the plumbing, which is the next main part, to actually get the heat cycling through the heater core to actually have something to blow through. But it's exciting. It's working so far, and yeah, see you in the next one.